How's everybody doing? Yeah, good. Thanks for joining us today. Yeah, I hope we're able to provide you guys some good content today. We think it's good content. The mission today, or the message today, is really to try to help everybody kind of see where the technology trends are heading. You know, there's been a lot of changes, especially over the last 3 years in particular, with how we're accessing data, you know, both from how the users are accessing data, in other words, not just from your office computer, but from all of these different, you know, mobile devices, iPads, Android devices, you know, laptops and what have you, to where we're accessing or where the applications are residing. In other words, the applications that in the past we were used to residing right on our local area network, right inside our building, are now where? What's the big word we hear all the time now? Cloud. Yeah, all these applications now living out in the cloud, and that really has changed. Those two things in particular have really changed the security landscape. So we're going to go through that today. This is not going to be a product presentation in any way, shape, or form. Feel free to stop me and ask questions. Again, I'm probably the non-technical person on the team. Not probably, I am the non-technical person on the team, and Dan apparently is the super technical person. So Dan's in the back of the room and can also make sure that he keeps me honest on any technical statements I may make, or will help also answer any questions you guys have. So first, SonicWALL. It's going to be first question here. Who here currently uses SonicWALL? Just kind of okay. So. Several of you, okay? Well, SonicWALL is a network security company. All right, we're a leader in the small medium business space with our firewalls. We also do email security, so spam and phishing protection. We have secure remote access solutions. We also do continuous data protection solutions as well, and then a host of different management and reporting capabilities for all of this technology. So the agenda for today of kind of what we'd like to go over, and we can kind of take this, and Dan and I have done these presentations enough that we can kind of adjust it for everyone here in the group, however it suits the audience today. But we're going to kind of review the technology trends. We'll talk about application intelligence and control. All right, what that means and why it's important. Introduce this whole concept of a next generation firewall. Right, in this industry we always hear these different terms. So we hear firewall, you hear stateful packet inspection, you hear some of the terms in the past have been UTM or unified threat management, and then now next generation firewall. And we'll kind of hopefully outline the evolution of some of these terms. And then if time permitted, we'll do a quick live demo and show exactly what we're talking about right from one of the next generation firewall interfaces, which is a pretty powerful way to really review what we're talking about today. Another question I always like to ask so I can kind of adjust the presentation accordingly is, who here feels that they are a technical person in whatever we want to define a technical person? You may just be a gadget person, you may be an engineer, whatever. Who is a technical person? You better raise your hand, Mr. Wright, because I know you are. Okay. All right. So about half and half. That's usually good. Dan, you didn't raise your hand? Super technical. Oh, Dan's super technical. That's right. That's right. Okay. Dan's super technical. So he can. Another word that I chose not to use. Thank you for not choosing that other word, Steve. I want to make sure, and if you hear me repeating myself more often, we're obviously doing a little video here today, and that way we can make sure that whoever watches this video understands some of the jokes that Steve might throw out there today. So some of the key tech trends today that we're talking about, and this is kind of a good slide that kind of identifies what we're seeing out there. And we've broken it out really from the top being kind of from the server side, and then the bottom being from the client side. So this whole idea of consolidation and of virtualization, and then this whole notion of service as a software. So again, now businesses utilizing applications living off network, living in the cloud. SonicWALL is a big user of Salesforce.com. You know, that's a primary way for us to handle our customer information. We're using it now for tech support. It really has enabled us to be much better at communicating between the different divisions, whether it be sales or tech support or engineering or what have you. But that tool is only good if the user has access to, what was that word again? The cloud, right? And if you don't, or if your network is running so poorly that you can't use it, it becomes almost worthless, right? From the user side, we're seeing all this, you know, Web 2.0 or collaboration, social networking type of applications. Some of them having varying degrees of business productive and not business productive uses, right? So your company may have a business Facebook page, and you may want to allow your users maybe to access that Facebook page for that, or maybe even allow them to access that for, you know, quick personal use. But does anyone here want to allow their users to play Farmville for 5 hours a day? No one? No one raised their hand? Okay, I didn't think so. We've honestly seen situations where we've gone into businesses or organizations, and we've found that there are users playing Farmville for 5 hours a day. Well, if a user's playing Farmville for 5 hours a day, and they're not a Farmville developer, you know, working for, I forget the company's name that created Farmville, what are they not doing if they're playing Farmville for 5 hours a day? What's that? They're not on Facebook, right. What else are they not doing? They're not working, right? They're not doing what they're supposed to. So this really starts getting into kind of a business productivity conversation. Then we talk about, obviously, again, the mobile devices and how widespread mobile devices are. This is actually kind of interesting looking out here. So I see a couple smartphones out on the table, a few smartphones, and you know, Steve obviously has his iPad. Different groups, and a lot of groups will have half or all the people that have their tablets out or laptops out or whatever. And we have this expectation now that we can always access the information that we need to access, whether it be business information or whether it be, you know, personal information, whatever we want, whatever we're trying to do. And then unified communication, right? The whole concept of being able to do, whether it be VoIP or instant messaging or whatever you're doing as far as unified communication. Again, the need for those services to work, it's important that the network is running smoothly, and in a lot of cases, it's important that you can access the internet. So all of this has caused a kind of a shift in some of the things that we're concerned with. We've always been concerned with the malicious code that's out there, the viruses, the spyware, intrusions, that type of thing. But now we're starting to concern ourselves with bandwidth, right, with business productivity, and other things that we weren't quite as concerned with as it relates to our network security or to our networking equipment as a whole. Kind of tying this all together, you think about the Web 2.0, the virtualization, the mobility, it all has this notion of a next generation security need. As bandwidth costs and need for bandwidth go up, there becomes a concern of what is actually going on in my network. And this slide is actually a bit dated. That number has gone up about 5%. It's been determined that roughly, and different networks vary, but roughly 20% of business internet traffic is non-business use. So in some instances, in one instance in particular, we were involved with a customer that we discovered that 40% of their bandwidth was actually Farmville. No joke. It was actually, you know, Facebook, game, Farmville. That's how much bandwidth was being consumed on their network in particular. Then you start thinking about all this from, you know, all these different things that are out there, whether it be blogging, whether it be the social networking sites, instant messaging, streaming video or audio, what have you, web-based email. Again, from an IT administrator perspective or from a business owner perspective, again, you go back to this business productivity concern, you go to bandwidth concern, situations where we run into with customers that maybe have, whatever, a 5 meg pipe, network's running slow, they double their network speed to 10 megs, and their network's running slow still. But hey, Pandora sounds awesome, and Netflix looks great in HD, right? A lot of these applications now are going to consume as much bandwidth as they can get. Who here is a Netflix person? All right. So one of the things you know when you launch Netflix is, what does Netflix do, especially if you're accessing it from, well, even from a browser or even from a Roku box or whatever. What's the first thing Netflix does? Measures your bandwidth. Checking available bandwidth. How much bandwidth am I going to take to make sure this video is the best possible quality I can provide you? And that's what these companies are trying to do. They're trying to make their product as good as they can and as accessible as they can. That's fine depending upon what you're trying to do. If you want your users watching movies or Netflix at work and consuming your bandwidth, that's great. If you don't, what are you doing about it, and do you even know what's going on? So the one thing that kind of gets glossed over a little bit right now, although that's changing, and Dan, did you bring in the today's USA Today? All right. In today's USA Today, I forget what the headline was, but it was a major a cyber attack that was on the front page of USA Today. I mean, this stuff is all over the place, and this malware and this malicious code and all this is continuing to increase significantly. And I mean, these hackers are now quite excited about all these new avenues they've had over the last couple of years to get their wares out there, and it's social networking. And why has this been so great? Because it plays on a significant trust factor, right? If Jim and I are Facebook buddies, right, and I get a post that says, and it looks like it's from Jim, and it says, hey, look at this crazy video of me doing something crazy. Well, I don't know Jim that well. That actually may be something that he would post. I've learned that about him already this morning, that is possible. Brian, for sure. I know that for a fact already. But it may not be. It may be somehow his account got breached or whatever, and that was posted. You click on that video, you get redirected somewhere. You may or may not be asked to download a particular codec or something. All of a sudden, you have malware on your machine, right? You have maybe a bot, virus, a Trojan, or whatever that's infecting your machine. So this is definitely something that we all have to pay attention to now. And some of the biggest companies out there, right, are not adverse to getting these types of breaches or having these type of breaches occur. Google is a big one. This year alone, we've had some major ones. Who here heard of the Epsilon breach earlier this year, or who here received emails on the Epsilon breach? I know I did. Most of the people I know did, because this is a company that tied into a lot of different companies with marketing, and a lot of names and email addresses were taken through this breach. One that hits very close to home with me is the PlayStation breach that occurred earlier this year as well, and it hits close to home to me because I'm actually a little bit of a gamer when I'm actually in St. Louis at home, which is not very often. But I had a credit card tied to my Sony PlayStation account, and soon after this breach occurred, I get a call, or my wife actually gets a call from the credit card company and an Apple store saying that I just purchased $5,000 worth of iMac equipment on the credit card that was tied to this. And these hackers, or the people that the hackers are selling to, are getting very aggressive now. My wife actually called the credit card company, Apple store. No, this isn't our charge. Everything was taken off. 60 minutes later, somebody called in as Kevin Schmutzler with my birth date and said, no, that my wife couldn't do that. We're getting a divorce. She didn't have the right to do that. I want the charges reinstated. And because they had my name and birth date, the charges were reinstated. And then I actually had to call and go through a whole process of getting everything eliminated. Again, it's one of those things where we have to be as vigilant as we can to try to protect ourselves with the onslaught of attacks that are occurring out there. And who are we afraid of? Who are the people that are doing this? This is, who knows who this is? Who knows who GeoHot is? I know Dan does. Dan's a big fan of GeoHot. This is the kid who first jailbroke, was able to break into the first iPhone. And last year, or was it earlier this year, I don't recall. was actually the one who jailbroke the Sony PlayStation device. So this is the guy that we're afraid of, right? This is the crime syndicate that we're all trying to make sure doesn't breach our data. And this is happening all over the world. And the interesting thing about this is you see some information on some of these botnet networks. And what a botnet network is where the hackers have been able to get their malicious code out to all of our PCs or servers or wherever they can get in and allow this code to sit on there and do whatever, send out spam messages or more malicious code or what have you. But that's not really the point of where I'm going here. The point of where I'm going to all this is, yeah, we know that's out there. We're all trying to avoid it. The most interesting thing about that, or one of the interesting things about it, I should say, is on one of the last arrests of 3 of the hackers that were arrested, the thing that I found most interesting of that arrest was it was stated that not one of the 3 people that were arrested had the technical ability to have written the code for this botnet. And it was like 170,000 machines interconnected together on this bot network that was doing this. What that tells me is this code is developed in such a way where even minor hackers now can use it, like you or I may install an instant message client or an app on our computer or phone, right? And then use it. Now, obviously these guys got caught, so how good were they? But the point is that there's a lot of these guys out there doing this. So we got a little test for you guys. Who thought there'd be a test today? So can anybody tell me what all of these different types of sites have in common? Streaming video, streaming audio, some browser-based gaming, and some business applications. You're not eligible to play. Anybody? They're all using more bandwidth. That's definite. No doubt about that. That is a true statement.
They're internet-based.
Very good, Brian. Brian, we've had a very good interaction today, you and me, haven't we? That's been awesome. Yeah. What's happening now is a lot of these applications are coming over to ports. Now, we know we got half technical and half non-technical, so the technical people obviously understand that port 80 and port 443 are HTTP and HTTPS. So since we have half the room raise their hands said they're technical, what happens if you take your firewall and say, you know what, since all these applications are coming over port 80 and port 443, I'm just going to block port 80 and port 443 and all my problems are solved?
True.
Wrong answer, Steve. Steve Wright said true to that question. I want to make sure that that's stated on the video. What happens if you block 80 and 443?
No internet.
You block the internet. You've turned off the internet. You've turned off your access to those business and non-business applications. Right. So a lot of the applications, again, we talked about earlier, these companies are trying to make this information accessible to us. What's the best way to make it accessible to us? Allow it to come over port 80 and port 443. Right? What about these? Which ports do the following use? ClickView, Quake Live, RunScape, Dropbox, Live Meeting. What do these use? See everybody processing the information. Well, they may use 80 and 443. A lot of them may use, non-traditional ports. And if those ports are blocked, what are they going to use? They're going to use 80 and 443, right? So one of the thought processes here, and if you think about a first-generation firewall, early 1990 checkpoint technology that came out, it was all about ports and protocols, right? If you didn't want a particular application on your network, you blocked access to that port it came in on. Well, now, if it's coming in on port 80 and port 443, that makes it much more difficult. Okay, I think this is the last question. Last question of the quiz. What do these have in common? FTP, so some peer-to-peer file sharing, BitTorrent, some proxy sites. What do they have in common? Anybody? Yeah, that's a good. Yeah, and that's true to all these questions. But that's it's exactly the point we're getting at. They will adapt, but there's something more to it there. they use a lot of bandwidth. All right, data transfer, bandwidth hogs, custom ports. They are to your point, the custom ports. They're dangerous. We have a lot of meetings with, especially like colleges, trying to determine how are they going to deal with peer-to-peer file sharing. Can they block it? Do they have to allow it? If they do allow it, do they have to? How much bandwidth do they allow? And how do they address that? Or from a business perspective, do you want to allow it at all? Because you don't necessarily have to allow it. So if we think about going back to this whole notion and evolution of the firewall, if we think about a first-generation firewall is going to see this web traffic that's coming in on port 80 and port 443, and it's going to see it as web traffic. And it's going to say, hey, this is web traffic. It's fine. You're good. Go ahead and come on in. All right? We use the analogy, an airport analogy of if I go to the airport, right, and for those of you who travel, this will make sense. If I go to the airport and I have a boarding pass that says Kevin Schmutzer is going from St. Louis to Kansas City, and I hand it to the TSA agent, he looks at it and says, yeah, this looks like you. I've identified you, and it looks like you're going where you're supposed to go. Take your bag and go on the plane, right? What a first-generation firewall doesn't see is it doesn't see, again, all those applications that are riding in that traffic, right? All the different business or non-business applications that are coming across those two ports. Back to the airport analogy, right? It doesn't see what's in the TSA agent by just checking my boarding pass doesn't see what's in my suitcase. So how do you deal with all this application chaos, right? All these applications flying around, coming in from the internet, onto your network, with you having no way of really telling, outside of maybe some simple content filter capability of saying maybe a URL, or if you have a package shaper, maybe you can see some deeper level of this. But in general, not really having an idea of what's going on the network, and from that point, not being able to do anything about it because you don't know what's coming in. So the questions that a lot of IT administrators and business owners are asking themselves is, what are the threats that are coming in? What applications are really on my network? The internet's slow today. Why? Why is the internet slow today? Is it my ISP, or is it something that's happening on my network, right? And then where's your traffic coming from? Right? We're starting to get engaged and talk about this whole risk threshold level of trying to minimize your risk. And you can minimize your risk by making sure that you're allowing access to what you need and controlling access to what you don't. All right, and we can talk about that even down to the country level of making sure that you're not necessarily talking to some of the bad countries out there that are the ones that are known to host a lot of this bad activity. So to overcome this, we're really starting to talk about this whole notion with application intelligence of identifying the traffic, being able to then categorize that traffic, and then from there allow you to control it. Allow you to control what users have access to what applications, right? And how much bandwidth those applications can consume on your network. And I like this slide a lot. This is probably my favorite one because I'm a very visual person, and this graphically represents what we're talking about. We talked about the identify piece. So we talked about that application chaos on port 80 and port 443, right? We talked about a traditional firewall not being able to see what's in the cloud, what's coming in from the internet. This whole notion of a next generation firewall is that you can identify these applications utilizing, and this always sounds like a marketing term, and it kind of is, but it actually is a patented technology. With SonicWALL, we actually utilize a reassembly-free deep packet inspection engine. That sounds like a really fancy, somebody in marketing created that word, right? But the reality is all next generation firewalls and even some of the different packet shaping technologies out there are going to use some form of deep packet inspection engine. All right, looking at more than just the header of the data that's coming in. All right, data that's traversing your network is made up of the headers and then the data payload, right? In a basic term, in a non-super technical term. And what the reassembly free piece means is we're scanning that data in real time as it traverses the firewall. All right. A lot of the other technologies out there are using what's called a proxy technology, where the data is coming into the network, it's being buffered into memory, it's being disassembled, it's being scanned, it's being reassembled, it's being sent through. That causes those solutions some issues. One is file size. The other one is user limitations. So in some of the technologies out there, you're limited to the file size that your solution can actually scan. Some of them actually have in there, if it's greater than 15 megs, we're not able to scan it. So you have two choices with a 15 meg file. What are those two choices? What's that? Accept, reject. Let it in unscanned, right? Or just drop it. And are either one of those really good options? Right? No, they're not. All right, so once you identify, then you can start categorizing, right? You categorize, and we're scanning this data as it traverses the firewall. We're looking for signatures for bad things. We're seeing there's malicious code in there. We're seeing viruses and spyware, whatever. We're blocking those. We're dropping those right at the gateway, right? We're identifying what users are on our network. So you can tie into an Active Directory with a single sign-on agent to when a user authenticates onto the network, identify that user group, should you be in an Active Directory environment. You can also manage users. For small customers, you can actually manage users right on the box, but identify those users. And then from there, you can then make an intelligent decision based on your policies within your organization of what you want to do. Have you determined that peer-to-peer file sharing is unacceptable? Yes, it's blocked. We're not going to allow it in. It's just the way it's going to be. With the next generation firewall, the nice thing about that is should you choose to block the peer-to-peer file sharing category, as new peer-to-peer file sharing applications come out, the next generation firewall is dynamically updating that category so you're not having to try to manage that yourself. The firewall is doing it for you. Okay. From there, you're saying, okay, we're going to allow these as acceptable applications. Maybe they have a business use, maybe they don't, right? I always use the term the ogre factor. How much of an ogre does the business owner want to be or the IT administrator want to be? And it's funny the differing views you get there. Some people are like, I am locking everything down. No one's getting anywhere except for where, a couple things I want them to. Others are like, you know what? My people work hard. I'm going to allow them Facebook. I'm going to hope they're not playing Farmville for 5 hours a day and what have you, or going to inappropriate sites or what have you. I don't want to be that ogre. And then there's always the middle ground. But you can say, okay, I'm going to allow YouTube. I'm going to allow Pandora. I'm going to allow Facebook, Skype, whatever. The other thing you can do is you can also determine a schedule for that. You can say, okay, I'm going to allow people to do some of the streaming video or streaming audio or whatever before 9 a.m., between 11 and 1, and then after 5. So if somebody's working late, they can stream Pandora, everybody else is gone, the bandwidth, no big deal. You can actually have that level of control for those applications that you have deemed acceptable on your network. And then obviously with the critical applications, you want to make sure those work. If you're using Salesforce.com like we do, if you need access to SAP or Oracle or some other business application out there, or even your voice over IP traffic, you can actually prioritize the bandwidth. You can say, if we see this application, if we see this business application, right, we're going to make sure it's guaranteed so much bandwidth on the network. And then from there, the ability to visualize and report on what you're seeing. So what is the next generation firewall? Well, as Gartner has defined it, you're still going to have your full stateful packet inspection, right? You're still going to look at those headers. If you see something bad there, you're just going to block it right away, right? That makes things as efficient as possible. Get rid of that data right at the entry point. You're going to have your intrusion prevention capability. You want to make sure you're looking for that type of activity, and again, blocking it. You're going to have this application control, the ability to block or allow specific applications, scanning at the application layer. Right, for the technical people, that makes sense. For the non-technical people, that may or may not. But you're scanning all the way to see an actual application, not just a website. Right? And then now the ability to have SSL decryption. Right? The ability to scan your encrypted traffic, your SSL traffic. All right. So for the technical folks, you become a man in the middle. You're decrypting that data, being able to scan it, and then being able to send it through. So, well, I guess there is one product slide on here. So with the SonicWALL, and the reason I put this up here is really just to show scalability. So with the SonicWALL Next Generation Firewall, you're able to scale everywhere from our TZ210 device, all right, from a really small, medium business environment, all the way up now to the largest enterprise. We don't have the slide in here with the our E10000 series, aka the Supermassive. Steve always shakes his head with that name. That is our trademark. That was our code name for our big boxes, which will actually do up to 40 gig throughput with all this scanning occurring. You know, we're talking hundreds of thousands of dollars worth of equipment there. But it's basically the same technology all the way up the line. All right, we're seeing different customers using this for different use. I mean, we're getting engaged for a variety of situations that we hadn't in the past as just being a traditional firewall with, in the past, just gateway security services running on the device. Basically, any SonicWALL firewall that has the gateway security services running on it has this ability. All right, we added this ability. We added this application intelligence and control capability to the product without adding any cost to the customer. It's just an additional service, a value add of the product. So anybody who has a current generation, a Generation 5 SonicWALL, so a TZ210, or any NSA firewall, with the exception of one, the NSA 2400MX is, for some reason, doesn't have it, but all the other boxes have this capability of what we're showing today. And then we also have a couple different deployment ways that we can put this product out, the solution out to either show customers the value of it, or based on the architecture of your network, be able to actually deploy it this way. But we traditionally are going to be a head-end firewall, so we're going to be the perimeter device doing your normal firewalling and then having all the scanning capabilities. We also have the ability to go into what's called a layer 2 bridge mode. So we can sit behind, if you have a legacy firewall and it's set, it's working, you got your VPN tunnel set up on it, all that's working, you don't want to pull that out or have to change all that, you can actually set us behind that and do all of these scanning things that we're talking about today, right, in that layer 2 bridge mode. For evaluation purposes, we actually have the ability to go into, I believe it's called tap mode, Dan, where you can mirror the traffic and basically show what we would have done if we were actually in production on the network. Just mirror the traffic on the network and say, hey, listen, this is what we're seeing, and had you had us actually in line and turned on, this is what we would have done, right? And we see a lot of environments like that where customers want to see what traffic's occurring on their network. And I'll tell you this, in this firmware code came out in January of this year, and there has yet to be a situation that Dan and myself and our team have been involved with where there wasn't something interesting found on a business or organization's network when they actually started evaluating it. Some of it more surprising than others, as you can all well imagine. There's a lot of different stories. We can talk about those offline if you'd like to hear some of them. But all in all, it really gains, people were able to gain some insight. I mean, we see things as simple as Dan was doing an evaluation with a school, and they were looking at the application visualization and intelligence and control, which I'm going to demo here in a second, and they saw that one user was taking a lot of bandwidth for videos and wanted to find out what was going on. Clicked on that user, and it was a school, and it was Dora the Explorer. It was fine. That's good. That's okay traffic, right? And then was looking at another user. Another user was hitting with some traffic, and clicked onto that one. And that user was a teacher that was actually just looking at home listings. Was going through a bunch of different home listings, and you could actually see the video tours and all that of the home listings that were going on. Again, that's kind of that's more the benign, kind of the not threatening traffic. But if you think about that to some of the traffic that may be more threatening, giving you some insight and then allowing you to put some controls in place on that. And then all in all, and I always like to use Dan's term with this, is what this does for you, the benefit of a next generation firewall, is it makes you very happy in the data center. You're a very happy person in the data center, just as that image shows. It allows you to definitely balance IT's needs. So the ability, whether you're utilizing the Nex-Tech managed security services for this or doing it on your own, the ability to simplify it, allow the device to be set up, and I'm not going to say there's no management to it, but the ability for it, a lot of the management to be automated, right? Or if there is something you need to do, allow it to be done easily and quickly. Be able to obviously prioritize those mission critical applications that we talked about, making sure those, if you're using cloud-based applications, that they're accessible, And then another one we didn't get into too much through this presentation, but the whole notion of things like data leakage. And what data leakage is a fear of data going out where it shouldn't. So somebody sending company sensitive data out through a peer-to-peer file sharing application, or through an instant message file transfer, or through a web-based email. I mean, you may have a great email security system that allows you to monitor inbound and outbound email, but what if that person takes and attaches a sensitive document to their Yahoo or their AOL or to their MSN, their Hotmail account or whatever, Gmail, whatever account? So really allowing you to be a much more efficient operation. Does all this kind of make sense so far? It's kind of sinking into what you're able to do here, all right? The power of this and kind of where it's evolving. So again, we've evolved from that first generation stateful packet inspection firewall technology, early 90s. We've added security services on, the ability to scan for malicious code, and now we've evolved that technology into an actual full-blown application awareness. With the SonicWALL solution, we're able to now identify over 3,500 applications on the network, and you can even build in some customization of that as well, where you can, if you have a certain application that you use, it's a little bit more technical, but you can actually tie that in and identify that as well. So with that, I think we got the point across as far as what we're talking about from kind of a high level. I'm gonna pull this down, and hopefully we're going to do a live demo here, and hopefully that works. You never know how those things are going to go, right? But I think it's very powerful when we are able to show specifically what we're talking about. And while some of this can get a little technical, I think the basic concept will come across. And again, if you have any questions about that, the Nex-Tech folks are here. They have the most trained engineers, maybe in Kansas, to be honest with you, but definitely in western Kansas.
What do you mean maybe?
Maybe in Kansas? Well, I'm not sure about the Kansas City market and who's in Kansas, who's in Missouri, Steve. There may be somebody over there who could challenge you.
They're 100%. Is there a number bigger than that?
Oh, no. Well, as far as percentage, you guys are definitely number one in Kansas. Yeah. But definitely in western Kansas, these guys are our go-to partner. And Dan actually had a training session this morning with the engineers, even going in more depth of this application intelligence piece, because it's so important to make sure that we can add this value to you. It's great that you have the product, but you want to be able to get the most out of it, right? So Dan has just stated that the Nex-Tech engineers trained him more than he trained them. So, well, that's good.
Well, send you a bill. No problem.
Okay, so one cool thing that SonicWALL has done is we have made all of our solutions available for the users to actually get in and see the interface. So if you go to livedemo.sonicwall.com, any of you guys can get in here and see this. You can get in here, poke around, play around. You're not going to hurt anything. It's just it's a live demo site. You can do pretty much anything except save changes. It just doesn't allow you to save changes, obviously. But if you go in here to the UTM application control firewall piece, and you click on this application intelligence link here, you're going to go, and what you're going to see is what the next generation firewall interface looks like. And the first thing you're going to see is this dashboard. I like to focus first on this real-time monitor. What this real-time monitor is now, if you're an IT administrator or if you're a business owner who's actually managing your own network or what have you, you can log into the device, and in real time you can see, identified in the legend below, what applications are hitting your network, all right, in real time. You can see how much bandwidth they're consuming. It gets a little hard to see on a projector, but if you hover over these, you can actually identify which applications are hitting in each of these peaks. You can also pull out specific applications that you may want to see and identify in particular. So you look down here below, you see all these different applications. You can pick different time, up to 10 minutes here, and all that. You can also see below, you're able to see some of the ingress and egress traffic on your firewall, and again, see if there's any cause for concern right now. So that question earlier of somebody calls IT and says the network's running slow and, hey, just reboot your computer, call me back. Now it's, okay, let me see if there's something out here, right? I mean, there's one time in particular that we see every year where we get those kind of calls a little bit more often, and it's usually March of any given year. Our SonicWALL tech support gets a lot of calls saying, my network all of a sudden is running really slow and I think it's my SonicWALL device. Well, what could it actually probably be in March of any year that's going to cause a network to bog down? Anybody? Somebody better answer this question in Kansas. March Madness, exactly. It's everybody in the office is all of a sudden streaming CBS Sportsline and watching their favorite team and seeing how much money they're going to win in their pool, right? So this is cool. This kind of gives you a high-level visualization. I can really see some insight on what's happening in my network, see if I see anything out here. In this instance, I can see some Dropbox traffic. I can see anything else good there right now. If there's YouTube there, if there's Facebook games, whatever, you'll see that. You'll see some general HTTP traffic or basic traffic that's not actually application driven. But if you get into this app flow monitor piece, you actually build this out in a more of a table view. So now I can see all these applications, right? And then I can start identifying a little bit more from them. So let's see what we got here. See if we got anything good. I always like it. YouTube shows really, really well if it's on here. So this is a on the live demo site. We just have a traffic generator, so you never know what's going to be there. Usually, there's never been anything too bad. Let's see if we get up here. Let's go 1 hour. Okay, there's Dropbox again. I want YouTube, Yahoo Toolbar, Weatherbug, Skype. Well, anyway, let's say, let's go to Dropbox. So let's say Dropbox. So, okay, I want to see some things specific to Dropbox. Well, one thing you can do is first, you just do a filter view. Okay, I want to filter view and only filter the Dropbox traffic. What that filter view does, right, is it allows you to now open up these tabs and see, okay, who's the user on Dropbox? So if you have multiple users, I can see that Steve and Jim and Olga are all on Dropbox, and I can actually identify which user is consuming the most bandwidth. If there's a URL related to it, you'll be able to see that URL. You'll be able to see some things on the initiators and the responders. You can see, obviously, IPs, but the other thing you can see is down to the country level. Let's do this. Let's factor out Dropbox in particular. Let's look at all the applications. So I can see, now I've taken out the filter of Dropbox. I'm looking at all applications. And I can see the specific countries, right, that either I'm talking to or that are talking to me, and then to identify what I want to, and determine if that's a good thing. Should I be talking to the Russian Federation? Should I be talking to China? Should I be talking to one of the stands, right? Kazakhstan, Afghanistan, Uzbekistan, yeah. Right? You know, and make a determination on it. We're going to show you some things how you can affect that. And I know this isn't a technical training meeting. I'm just trying to give you guys the concepts of what you can do with the thought process of being able to do this. I'm reducing my risk threshold, the ability for threats to actually get onto my network. So going back here to the applications, right? So,
and going back to the users, I mean, Steve was saying before, it's integrated with your server and your users. It doesn't matter which computer they're on.
Correct. Yeah. If you have Active Directory, you can tie in with a single sign-on agent, and you can actually have those authenticated users identified into this. Absolutely. So while you can create some pretty advanced policies, you can create policies based on groups of applications like peer-to-peer file sharing, social networking, whatever. You can also do something and quickly and easily, like just blocking an application very easily. Now, with the latest code, you can go onto something like Dropbox, and let's say, okay, I don't want to allow Dropbox in my network. I know that for a fact. I'm not worried about other items that would fall into that category, but I know I don't want Dropbox. So to block Dropbox, all you have to do is click on Dropbox, create rule, block. Done. Dropbox is blocked. It's funny, one of a peer of Dan of mine does a presentation where he actually gets on his own SonicWALL firewall, and he'll show the network traffic on his own network at home, and he'll say, well, look here, my wife's on Yahoo Instant Messenger, and my wife is streaming something on YouTube. He'll pick on Yahoo Instant Messenger. He goes, my wife is now not on Yahoo Instant Messenger. And usually a couple people in the crowd will usually say, turn your phone on, I want to hear this conversation. The other thing you can do is you can bandwidth manage. So there's some built-in bandwidth manage policies already set, high, medium, and low. You can create a custom one should you want to. But let's say you just wanted, Dropbox is killing my network on bandwidth. Some people are really using it a lot. I don't mind allowing it. We allow it on our network. But I don't want to just, every time someone uses it, just drop my network. I want to bandwidth manage it. And you can then create rule, and you're done. Any questions so far about this?
Can you create the rule to allow that only after 5?
You can create a rule to do that. You can't create it from the simple 4-click method. That is just a way for you to get in there. You see something, you want to block it, bandwidth management, done. You can create a rule to say, I want to allow Dropbox before work, during lunch, or after. But that's in a little bit more advanced policy creation. It's not overly advanced, but it is a little bit more advanced than the quick method. Because we had a lot of users when this code came out saying, this is great. I just wish I just had a simple way of, I see a certain application that's kill my network, I just want to block it. That was really the main purpose for that. And then other users who want more advanced capabilities obviously continue to have that advanced capability. So some of the, just kind of getting into the different applications that we're looking at, we'll get in here to the actual match objects, which are the applications, just to kind of show you guys the level of granularity that you have with this solution. So we always like to pick out just a couple categories. So here's the different categories. So you have this category section of different apps. So you have app updates. So you have, if your Adobe updates or your Microsoft updates are starting to bog your network down and you want to, have a level of control of those, you only want those to occur, at night or whatever, you can do that. But let's pick out here, let's do gaming, IM, and let's do social networking. That's always a good one. So now what we've done is we've just selected those categories, and now we see all of the different signatures. A signature is basically what we're utilizing to capture either a malicious code. We're seeing a signature in that malicious code and dropping it, or we're using that signature to capture a particular application. And so we're seeing these different applications in here. You can stream that. You can see some AIM, some AOL and some Messenger. You can see some, there'll be BitTorrent in here. I didn't pull peer-to-peer file sharing, so that won't be in here. I like to always pick on, we got to let this build out. I always like to pick on Facebook, though. Facebook's always fun. Everybody knows Facebook. Oops. Is it built out? I went too far. Okay, so Facebook. So with Facebook, okay, with content filtering, you can block Facebook as a website. With application intelligence and control, you can block different aspects of Facebook. Again, I think we stated earlier, you can allow Facebook as the website, but start to disallow or control maybe bandwidth of, oops. Is my demo going awry? There we go. You can start identifying out different things within Facebook. So again, allowing Facebook, but here's a good one. We like to point this one out. So saying, okay, I want to allow Facebook. I want to disallow Mafia Wars and Farm Bill and what's your favorite one, Dan? Fashion War. Dan's favorite one is Fashion War. Disallow all those, right? And I also want to start to block things like the external like button on Facebook. All right. Now, you don't have to get down to that level of granularity, right? You don't have to say, okay, I'm going to pick just these individual things, but it gives you that control. And again, it's all based on what policies the IT administrator or the business owner wants to have for their particular network. Again, going back to that ogre factor, what is of most concern to you and giving you that level of control? Again, allowing things like Yahoo Instant Messenger, but disallowing file transfer or video chat on Yahoo. that level of power. And then, of course, and we always like to show this one too. We talked about this one already, but I always like to show that we have an actual specific signature in for it. There we go. I passed it again. Oh, I didn't pick multimedia. That'll be in here. Don't leave me yet, guys. Stay with me. I hear it getting quiet. I know some people get uncomfortable. There we go. So we actually have signatures specifically for NCAA March Madness. So you can decide to block all activity with NCAA March Madness, whether it be, and there's some different, you can see the different signatures within here that you can identify out. Different sites, you know, different video streams, whatever, within the two. A lot of times we'll have this presentation and somebody will say, can I prioritize my NCAA March Madness so it comes out in HD all the time and everything else is pushed back? I don't care if it is business applications. I guess it depends on what level you're actually in the organization and what say you have in that, right?
We just want to be able to block like K-State and allow K-State.
Block K-State, yeah. Dan always obviously uses, you know, his request to put a signature in to block Mizzou, right? Since I'm a Mizzou alum, he likes to always say that.
You don't have to because they have to use
Oh, that's right. That's the joke. Dan says that you don't have to block Mizzou because they're not going to make it to the tournament anyway. Thank you, Dan.
Now, somewhere in there, I saw user/groups. Can you have groups that you allow that for and groups that you don't?
Absolutely. Yeah, again, that goes back to the single sign-on agent, Active Directory, so you can tie into your Active Directory group and decide what users you want to allow access to either groups of applications or individual applications.
From the simplistic terms, I can have my super group and I can have the groups that can't do anything.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, well, a lot of times we'll have, especially when we're usually talking to a lot of IT folks, they'll be like, okay, so the owner's got to have access to everything. I, of course, need to have access to almost everything. I might need to block myself from a couple things to make the owner happy. And then I want my sales department blocked from everything. And you're like, you know, oh yeah, you can do that. Like, perfect. I like this tool. My salespeople don't work.
more things like social networking. A lot of times they do a marketing team and people say, you know, we don't want Facebook at all, but we've got our own Facebook page. So let's allow marketing to update Facebook, go to Facebook, and what have you, that nobody else can see. That's where it comes on, think about fitting that with Twitter. And again, it's different departments I have, completely different needs in terms of applications.
Yeah, as you know, Dan was stated for the video here, just giving you that level of granularity to be able to allow different departments access to different information that you want to have access to that information. And then the last thing I want to show is kind of from the security side, what we're doing here as far as some different tools, and especially since we have some SonicWALL folks in the room, you may or may not be aware of some of this stuff. So one of the things, there's three things here I think we want to pinpoint. Again, trying to reduce that risk threshold is this new GeoIP and botnet filter. So we give you the ability to just outright block known botnet command and control centers. All right, block those. It's kind of an IP reputation tool here. And then the ability to select, as we talked about earlier, select those specific countries, right? Block out all those countries that are known to host a lot of this bad activity. Be able to block those out right now. There may be some exceptions, or you may have a business where interest in a China or Russia or whatever. You may not be able to block every one of them, but again, the more you can block, the more you minimize the amount of risk you have. And then lastly, one thing we've added to the gateway antivirus piece is this whole notion of a cloud antivirus capability. So with a next generation firewall, or previously with a what was called unified threat management, when you're scanning for this malicious code, right, you can only host so many signatures on box. So I think on box, we're at about 22,000 signatures for antivirus alone on the box, right? But there's a lot more signatures out there for viruses. So that's why you kind of count on that layered security. You have your gateway security device, you have your client layer, but now we have the ability to actually thumbprint that data as it's coming through the firewall and actually quickly query this 6.6, almost 6.7 million additional signatures to increase the level of protection that you're going to have utilizing one of the current SonicWALL next generation firewalls. So I wanted to make sure we pinpointed that out too. So I think you know, the net of all of this for you guys is seeing, well, first of all, understanding, which most of you I'm sure already do, seeing where the technology is heading, kind of getting our arms wrapped around of all these applications coming in on the internet now, having an understanding of that, right, and seeing where the technology is going to address that. And there's some neat things. I mean, this is, when we see the roadmap of some of the things that are out there to try to even advance what we've seen today, there's some nice stuff out there. But just be aware of what's out there, right, and then make sure you're doing your best for your business or organization to minimize your threats. Any questions before we close up the session? Please.
Do you have anything about data loss? Is there a data loss prevention?
Yeah, I mean, a big piece of what we're talking about with data loss prevention as it relates to this is really coming down to controlling that webmail access, controlling the file transfer on instant messaging, that type of thing.
There's no number matching rules or anything,
Social Security matching patterns was the question, Dan?
There's Social Security matching patterns, but if you've got like a confidential watermark or something on your Word docs, we can load that image in and say every time we see this image, we'll just block that information. So little stuff like that. And also too, like Kevin said, a lot of it's, you know, webcam type traffic and stuff like that. That's the newest risk for this DLP. A lot of those DLP companies are looking at data, diving into data that's in motion, right? So on the wire, kind of like what we're doing there, and the second, but they're not looking at the transport mechanisms, which are these other applications. Because you can always, you know, they want to stop you from cutting it off and walking out the door with it, but what if I just, try to scan it or do it through, you know, webcam? It's just another risk.
Yeah, so to Dan's point, what he said, so we'll make sure this is clear for anybody who would watch this on the video. Dan was talking about the ability for, in the case of something like a confidential watermark, being able to take that image, being able to take the hexadecimal representation of that, and being able to scan for that. So we have that capability, and then the ability to control some of the things like video content. So, good question. Thank you. Okay, well, with that, we'll close the session out. Dan and I will hang out here for a little bit. If anybody has any questions you want with us one-on-one, we'll be glad to answer that. And thanks, everybody, for your time. Appreciate it.